legal side of doing a Kickstarter for your novel? Let's talk to an IP and entertainment lawyer to find out more.
My name is Tony Iliakostas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that's dedicated to all things intellectual property.
Tony, we're seeing a rise in authors using Kickstarters to promote their book launches to raise money before the book goes to publication. Can you break down some of the legal side of this?
Yeah, so first off, your central document, the kind of like let's call it the lighthouse, if you will. The lighthouse in any situation for any author that deals with something like this is always going to be your publishing contract. Your agreement with your publisher is going to lay out whatever provisions are obligated by the publisher, but equally will lay out what is obligated of you as the author. So you have to deliver your drafts on this given date. You have to make sure that you're providing something authentic, that is not infringing on any existing copyright, that you've properly vetted it. And I'm sure that in this dawn of AI, there may be even a provision that will say that you did not use any generative AI works to generate this work of authorship. Again, I guess to, further assert that you're not infringing on any existing copyright. All of those would be laid out in a publishing agreement. What you would need to see, though, is probably some type of provision, either titled marketing or promotion, something to that effect, with a headline of that sort, that lays out exactly what's going to be the marketing plan for this given book, this manuscript. The publisher will certainly have their own given method of promoting the book. They'll have, let's say, a run on social media where they will promote it for a number of weeks. They're going to work with local bookstores. They'll work with online bookstores to make sure that it gets some type of, front store coverage. There are a bevy of ways that the publisher is going to help promote your book. In the same way, there are obligations that you, the author, have to make in order to promote your book. So maybe you have to independently go onto social media and promote it. Some book publishing agreements even provide that you, the author, will make reasonable efforts to go on press junkets to have your book agent or you yourself be able to book interviews so that way you can get the word out about your given publication. In that specific clause, and by the way, this is not like, I'm going like the industry standard. Obviously, this can be tailored, this can be amended. You see a total variety of different terms in this type of promotion marketing clause, but this is where it gets funky. That's where you would need to then check if starting your own Kickstarter is something that is permissible under the terms of the contract. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because Kickstarter, you make money off of it. You get donations, and the way it works is there are tiered packages, right? So if you donate this much, you get this perk. If you donate this much, you get that perk. And usually the more you donate, the better the perks are. The question is the publisher entitled to some aspect of that profit from Kickstarter? Now, I would bet my bottom dollar that a big 5 publisher would not be cool with something like this whatsoever. They're a big 5 for a reason. They have some sense of autonomy. They are well-recognized brands. And I think in some regard, if an author did use a Kickstarter to promote their book in some capacity, unless they had a lot of negotiating power and they had some leverage to get that clause in their contract, a big 5 publisher would probably think, oh, well, using Kickstarter dilutes our brand as a whole because it makes it seem like we're not doing our part to help promote the author. So maybe there's a world where the big 5 would not embrace a Kickstarter. However, maybe there is a little bit of latitude with a mid-sized publisher, maybe with a small or indie publisher. But still, if it's not laid out in the contract, you should not think that it's allowed. And it's surely, I've told this even in my day-to-day at work, just because a contract is silent on something doesn't mean that it's okay to go forward with it or that it's permitted, period. Like, silence is not acceptance. That's what I learned in law school, and that's typically what is the industry standard across the law, period. So basically, if you're interested or if you're thinking about using a Kickstarter, first and foremost, make sure that you check your publishing agreement to see if that's even allowed. And this is if you've already signed said contract. If you've signed said contract and it's not permitted, you want to then check to see if maybe there is an opportunity to amend the contract or add an addendum, an amendment to that contract about the Kickstarter campaign. If that's not allowed, then you're just going to have to go forward with whatever is set forth in the terms of the contract. If you have not signed the publishing agreement and you do want to do a Kickstarter, that's where your lawyer, your publishing lawyer, will come in handy to help redline that part of the contract to allow a provision that allows you the benefit of using a Kickstarter campaign to not only promote your book, but also get a little bit of extra dough in your pocket. So that way you can, have some type of financial sustenance for all the hard work that you spent on your book. But whether you're talking about already having signed the agreement and looking at it after the fact, or even before signing the agreement, a publishing lawyer is definitely going to be your best advocate here. Having them help navigate this whole landscape and even talking to your publisher will help at least get an understanding of where the publisher is in terms of having something like this.
Mhm.
And remember, I've said it before time and time again, lawyers act as advocates for their client. They are there to help you and protect your rights, regardless of what the area of law is. If we're talking about a landlord-tenant lawyer and they're representing tenants, a tenant lawyer is there to represent the rights of and protect the rights of the tenant. If we're talking about a tort lawyer and you've been injured in an accident, the tort lawyer acts in the interest of the person who has been affected by an accident of some sort. And in the same way, you, the author, have to go to a publishing lawyer because that lawyer will represent your rights and make sure that you are legally protected. So having a publishing lawyer scope out the terms of the contract and redlining or talking to the publisher to see if there could be an amendment made to allow the Kickstarter is the way to go. But again, really cannot emphasize this enough. If the contract is silent, do not assume that it is allowed. You need to make sure that you go through the whole legal checklist first before you even navigate it. Because if you do end up using a Kickstarter and you do make money and the publisher found out, you could actually be in breach of contract. And that is a whole can of worms that you definitely do not want to open up.
Now, from an indie perspective, is there anything on the legal side that we need to worry about since we do not have to work with a publisher on this?
So, I mean, on the indie side, you're pretty much fully autonomous, right? Like you have no problem, having, let's say, some type of perk system. Maybe, like, again, the more you donate, the better the perks are. Maybe you get a Q&A with the author, or you get an opportunity to get a signed book or signed memorabilia, whatever the case may be. Just be mindful that obviously you're making money off of it. So you're acting as essentially an independent contractor. So not necessarily a publishing lawyer thing, but you also want to make sure that you're actually talking this more financial. And I'm not a finance expert, but financial advice here. Make sure that you're at least reserving a portion of it towards taxes, because obviously you're probably going to be getting a W-2 or 1099 in this case from Kickstarter with your earnings, and you're going to have to report a portion of that to the IRS when tax season rolls around. Not to give anybody PTSD or any sort of anxiety, but that is a reality. But broadly from a legal perspective, I really don't see the issue. Again, if you're independently publishing the book, it's the kind of thing where it really shouldn't raise the red flag. If that's your way of marketing and you're being a bit ambitious and entrepreneurial by doing it that way, I think actually, if anything, it shows that you're building a direct bridge and a connection to your readers. And actually that could up your authorship a little bit more and give you some street cred for sure.
Okay, so one thing I do want to talk about with this is that reward system. So if you're doing a Kickstarter and you are giving out those rewards for people buying into the different levels, do we have to then be aware of any contractual things when it comes to maybe the artwork we're using or the different products that we're going to be giving them? Is there anything we need to be concerned with on that side if we are not the people creating some of those things that we're including?
So this is where it then gets a little bit dicey. If, let's say, you commission an artist to draw artwork for you for your book, and let's say you're selling like a little poster print or a postcard print of that said animation that came from an artist, what first and foremost, what you need to make sure you already have had in place is some type of work made for hire contract between you and the illustrator. The last thing you need is no contract that lays out that relationship, because if that contract is absent, also opens up a whole can of worms. The illustrator is going to say, oh, well, I definitely am the copyright owner. I'm the one that spent the time and effort in illustrating this. And then on the other hand, you, the author, are going to say, well, I commissioned you to do the work, and by proxy, you're acting as my employee and you're making this for me. having a work made for hire contract will lay out exactly the relationship that takes place between you and the illustrator. And if it lays out that the illustrator is basically working on behalf of the author and is conveying full copyright ownership upon completion of the work, then that's something that obviously, affords you the benefit of adding that as a perk to your subscribers that join your Kickstarter campaign. But that's something that you would need to have well in advance, even before you even think about the Kickstarter campaign. And that's even just like more of like a broad legal game plan that you want to have, especially if you're independently publishing. If you're just in it to write the book and you need someone to help with creating the book cover or creating some type of graphics or anything related to the marketing of your book, defining that work made for hire relationship by way of a contract is something that is super important. And of course, if you've never worked with a work made for hire contract, if you've never seen one in your life, don't play around with fire. Don't go on, the dark web that is OpenAI or ChatGPT to generate that contract. There are tons of lawyers out there that are more than happy to provide some type of template of a work made for hire contract that you can use by way of either talking to the said lawyer, publishing lawyer, or there are lawyers that do offer contract template shops that maybe cater to the publishing community. You could definitely buy a copy of a work made for hire contract that you can use not only in one given situation, but now you can use forever, as long as you ever run a business of this sort. So having that fully laid out and defined is super important. That way you're not dealing with legal headaches when the Kickstarter campaign rolls around and you get that unsolicited email from illustrators saying, hey, I never gave you permission to use this for memorabilia and for perks. I want in on the dough. So having that all squared away in advance is definitely going to be the beneficial thing here. I should also add that your work made for hire contract should lay out some type of provision about an understanding that you're paying them a one-time fee for that given work and that they're not entitled to, let's say, royalties. It's just an afterthought that I had, that they're not entitled to any profits that could be made after the fact for use of that given illustration. So having them understand that it's a one-time fee and that's it, it's also needs to be clearly defined in that contract.
And we've had conversations with Tony on working with artists and cover designers and all of those things in the contract side of it. So make sure you check out the legal playlist. I'll link that down below for you. If you have follow-up questions on this, now's a great time to drop those. And we're going to continue the discussion on using Kickstarter inside of your book launches here on the channel. Tony's coming back for episodes on this, so make sure you follow along for even more in-depth information on how you can build your business by using Kickstarter to launch some of your upcoming novels. Get your questions down below. And as always, you can reach out to Tony on his social media. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at The IP Professor. And you can check out my entertainment law podcast called End Scene, with new episodes dropping every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Every question's down below. Tony's coming back for upcoming episodes, and we have daily videos helping you navigate the world of publishing, from your writing to your publishing to your marketing, to make this your most profitable year ever with the least amount of stress, overwhelm, and time commitment, so that you can live your best author life while also living your life.